I got a question for the room. Who in the room is a basketball fan? Yeah? Like, how about NBA? Clap. Who loves the NBA? Yeah? Do you know the player Bill Walton? Yeah, right? Like NBA Hall of Fame? That's not who we have for you today. But if there was a sales Hall of Fame, this Bill Walton would be in it. And I'm not exaggerating, you guys. It's like my sincere pleasure, and this is a treat today, guys. We have Bill Walton. He owns his own sales training company, and he has impacted millions and millions of dollars in revenue, and he has helped, I don't even know how many, thousands of sales reps achieve their goals and be successful, and I'm one of those sales reps. Yes. So I'm not just telling you this based on a bio I've read. I'm telling you this because I have had his trainings. I have had the privilege of having a business professional, relationship. I won't say how long because that makes it sound old. But he impacted my revenue. He impacted my success. So he has come down from New Jersey, and he's going to share some knowledge with us. So I want a really big SMB welcome for Bill Walton. Woo!
Thank you. Yeah, Michelle, we've known each other for a while, and every time we connect, it feels great. I'm so happy for you, lucky for Citrix that you joined, and vice versa. So glad to be with you all today, because I still carry the bag. This is what I do, and about 17 years ago, I made a decision in life to stop selling and start teaching and training, and I get rewarded every time I come to a session like this, so I'm really excited. But I'm probably more excited because I do have a lot in common with Bill Walton, the basketball player. We're both kind of tall. We both own a few tie-dyed t-shirts, and I drove by a Grateful Dead concert once on the way to a CVS drugstore. So we've got a lot in common, but I'm glad to be here. The real Bill Walton is here. And the topic of today is how we're going to mean more to clients. This is such an exciting time for Citrix and SMB. I'm excited to talk about small business because you're looking at a small business owner. And I live and reside and talk to and consult with many, many small business owners and what they're experiencing today. And it's not a bad story at all. It's a great story. So the timing is perfect. I think the timing is perfect because we've had a chance to walk the halls of some large organizations and small organizations. And once you get a few gray hairs, you start to have a point of view and you get a chance to write a few books and get some critical acclaim for that, where we facilitate at Wharton. We've been on CNN a few times and have graced the pages of Forbes magazine. So what does that mean is that today is really about me giving. You're going to hear a term at the end of the talk today, a giving hand is always full. And that's how I look at these engagements, the chances I have to talk to organizations like this. They have people asking, Bill, don't you get stressed out? Don't you get nervous? And I say, yeah, I do. But when I say, hey, my day and my time is about giving, that all just kind of washes away. Also, before we get started, I hear we have a few landscapers in the room. Can anyone kind of give me a shout out? Who did some landscaping yesterday? Number one, my heart and my hat goes out to you. What a great thing to do. What a great team building and purposeful and responsible thing to do. I'm so happy for you and happy for leadership that you had the opportunity to do that. I was engaged in something similar a few years ago in New Orleans where we rebuilt a couple baseball fields at the end of, after the aftermath of Katrina. So it was very, very exciting. I also want to give you my address. It's 11 Nassau Drive, Lawrenceville, New Jersey, 08648, in case you want to come up. My backyard looks really bad right now, so thanks so much for that. So where are we going to go today? I think we have about an hour, and I'm going to be around for some Q&A, so I'm very excited about that. I think, more importantly, I want to continue to congratulate you not only for where this organization is right now, but for this experience that you're having this week. And it's really kind of near and dear to my heart, and I'll tell you what that means in a little bit. We'll talk about the timing of this week, and we'll talk about what's trending. What's trending in our organization, what's trending in sales and selling, and what's trending in small business. And I think in the next 57 minutes, we're going to be able to create some better alignment. So while this week was great, next week's going to be even better. And this concept of meaning more, I kind of got off the title slide pretty quickly, but when I started selling, I started in an organization that was a challenging but supportive environment. A lot of support, a lot of accolades, a lot of coaching, a lot of training. But they're also very challenging. So I had to think about what's going to be my rallying cry to be successful. And I started my career for a company where the territory was vacant for a long, long time. And I'm going to tell a story in a little bit, so I don't want to get ahead of myself. But you're going to hear this concept, meaning more. How do you mean more to that small business owner? You're not just a vendor or a supplier. And I think at the end of our talk today, you'll be able to articulate that and execute that and figure out from a behavioral standpoint what we need to do as we're to be successful in doing that. I also want to help you understand a little bit of insight into some of the sectors and industries that you're selling into, as they are small business, and I've got some experience in each one of those industries that you're selling into. So I want to give you some nuances and some insights that might help you better connect, either more quickly and more deeply with those individuals, and then we'll wrap it up towards the end of today. So I had to think about today and where you are in this very interesting and beautiful space, and where you are right now, what you experience right now, where the talent is coming from. Those of you I've had a chance to meet briefly, new to the organization, new to this division, I think we are so fortunate right now. I think we're fortunate in that you've got a great product to sell, a great solution. The timing is right as a small business owner who thinks he's technically savvy or has some aptitude, but has to work remotely, constantly. My office is in that little chair back there. You might have seen me sitting in it. So the time is also right for our culture. And I'll go back many, many years ago. I won't put a number to it, but I had a chance to work for a consumer products company called Nestle Foods. Has anyone ever had a Nestle Crunch bar or enjoyed a Nestle's Quick? Right, well, I sold that. Great. Put those hands high. And it was such a great environment. I'll never forget when I joined, there was this brochure, the career advancement brochure. And what I liked was the line was trending up. And I thought, well, that's a good direction, right, for me in terms of a career trajectory. So I interviewed with the company. I met my boss, looked like Tom Selleck. Oh my gosh, sales manager, that's what you're supposed to look like. But he was so kind and smart and loved the business. And then I met his boss, same thing. Then I met a couple of key account managers. I remember this gal, Terry Balzano, I'll never forget. She greeted me with such an open smile and just hoped that I would join the organization. And I did, and had a great career. I finally got promoted, and I went to an awards presentation in Naples, Florida, and our VP of sales came up. Tom Snyder played football at Notre Dame, probably had hands the size of both of mine together. And he came up and clinked my glass and said, "Hey, Walton, you finally made it." And I was like, thanks, Tom. And he pretends to walk away, spins right around and takes his big hand and pokes me in the chest and said, "But how many people did you promote?" And I said, before I could say a word, I promoted two, he just walked away. And for 3 days, what did that mean? Where's my career going now? What did I just get scolded? And I'm in the taxi back to the airport, and I said, no, I was just given a lesson. Should I and will I, and do they want me to sell that next train car load of Nestle's Quick or Nestle's Crunch? Absolutely. But they want you to develop talent. Because this organization, your success is going to be fueled by the people in this room and how you come together as a culture and your passion and your own motivation. So that's why, bless you, why I thought we're so fortunate to be here today in this time. So let's talk about our timing, as I mentioned before. Let's talk about what's trending. One of the things we're seeing is everything is impact everything. Impact investing, impact as it relates to sustainability and the environment, impact as it relates to philanthropy. Everyone wants an impact and wants to be able to measure an impact. And I think so much of the change that you're seeing in business as we move from workplace to workspace is all about that change. And I have to be honest with you, most small business operators and managers, owners, they're not real good at managing that. So I think that's a real gift that you can provide, is help them see through change and help them be successful. As I mentioned before, from workplace to workspace, I can't tell you how many senior executives that we coach that are working in areas that aren't really close to where the headquarters is. They put their FaceTime in and they walk the halls and they have the corner office. But they're out in the field, they're out with customers, they're out with people. And I'd almost prefer that. And that's an interesting contrast to a dear friend of mine who was applying for a job. He's in the social media, creative media space. And he was turned down for a job because he wouldn't move to LA. And I'm like, in this day and age, with all of, with workspace and this move from workplace to workspace, it's just very interesting. A dear friend of the firm and a friend of mine personally runs all of sales for a large insurance company in Ohio. right in the center of Ohio, but he lives in New Jersey. So in a way, we're allowing people to have an impact no matter where they are. So again, workplace to workspace, I know that's why we're here, and you can pick up on that theme. Hearing security, cybersecurity, you think about some of the industries that you're calling on, right? The need for security, protecting documents, whether it be intellectual property, client and customer data, right? There's a duty of care that comes along with that, so we're hearing that as a trend, and I think that plays in nicely to the workspace solution and the work that you're doing right now. My device, wherever you want to work on it. I happen to have a MacBook Pro Retina. It's 5 years old. I love it. It's the most productive tool that I have. But if you saw the few books that I wrote before in that slide that I, again, breezed right by, because I don't want to talk about myself too much as a basketball player. I'll never forget, I wrote the book, and I didn't write it on my laptop. I went to Best Buy, and I bought the biggest, best Mac Daddiest iPad and one of those Bluetooth keyboards. And I didn't use Word. I just used Notes, because I wanted this to be fun. And I had a really great editor. I sent the first iteration over there, and he sent me back the red line version. I waited 2 weeks to open the file. And I finally opened it up, and all he said was, "Hey, Bill, great job. Just be more playful in your writing." I couldn't have done that on a work laptop, but I did it on my little pad, on my lap, or wherever I was with the little keyboard. So my device. Artificial intelligence. I just left a digital customer acquisition conference in New York City 2 weeks ago. I was a speaker at Invest 2018, which is really talking about digitization of the investment process and the investor journey. And we heard people from the large investment houses, some think tanks, and some technology firms. And the manner in which the technology is evolving in that space is such that in 18 months, how you will access your finances, think about investing, will dramatically change. The decisions and insights that will be made for you or supported for you will be drastically different. You think about the concept of the Internet of Things, right? Devices that kind of talk to each other, share data. Well, someone's got to make sense of that data, and someone's going to use an algorithm. Hey, there's going to be some story to be told. So AI is impactful, and no one's really figured it out. No one really has come up with a definition. So it's about technology, it's about interoperability, but also decision-based data that organizations can make really good decisions on, and that's a theme. And then the other theme is these fintechs, right? The whole nature of the manner in which you apply for a loan, set up a bank account, move money around is already changed and is changing. Traditional banks and wealth management firms, they are very worried about this, and they're behind the eight ball, behind the curve in terms of the investments they've made in technology, because their margins have been so thin with people buying ETFs and using interactive brokers and trying to think about, gosh, do I really need to pay a financial advisor those fees or those commissions on mutual funds? Maybe I can do it myself and then maybe tap out and be able to call someone to help me. So these are some trends that are happening now, which again, I continue to be excited for all of you, because so much of what you're doing and what we're doing in the solution in this SMB space is aligning with so many of these trends. Let's talk about the last slide. So what's the big whoop about the last slide and the trends? And great, Bill, great. Thank you for your observations. What that feeds, and this is a term that if you have your note, I see some notepads out, please write this down. I think this is one of the greatest gifts I can give you, is I think you can leverage your issue fluency when prospecting into the businesses that you're prospecting into, whether it be construction, whether it be distribution and services, whether it be accounting and legal. They all have their challenges, they all have their pebbles in their shoe, they all have some level of success at business development and productivity, but many of them are still struggling. And I'm sure that's why it's a focus of the organization. And I know a lot about these businesses. And what's nice is I'll give you a few nuggets about each one of those before we close out today. This issue fluency is so important, because when you're connecting with a small business owner, to get that additional time on the phone and have some impact and sell multiple, I'll use the term seats, right? Is they're going to respond to that issue fluency. You know me, you get me, you understand my world. You've kind of walked in my shoes a little bit, and it feels good, and it sounds like you kind of know what we're up against. And Kurt was mentioning how sales is changing. This is one of the big reasons. Anyone standing in this space has some tool, has some solution. But it's the ambassador of that solution who can bring actionable insights related to the challenges, pressures, and drivers, pebbles in the shoe of those people in those industries. Whether you're an accountant, CPA, or running the biggest architectural firm in New York City, they have that context Context will be king and will serve you well. So put energy against that. Kurt also mentioned, again, the business is changing. I think selling to small business is changing because what's needed behaviorally and from a good heart and head space is a higher degree of empathy. Higher degree of empathy for what these small business owners are trying to accomplish, how they're structured, how they care about their customers, and how they care about their employees. So I've got some dimensions of empathy I'd love to kind of walk you through, and then we can make some conversation out of that as we go through today. 18. Small business owners, entrepreneurs can work any 18 hours a day they want. Sometimes that's a great thing, and sometimes that's not such a great thing. Unless they're fully self-actualized, most business owners are thinking about their business constantly. At the beach, ironing their shirt, having a meal. But the better ones, hopefully the ones that have been coached by the basketball player up here, have understood that for me, I'm going to be more successful managing my energy, not my time. I'm going to know where my bursts of productivity come from. I'm going to know how to create and provide productive solutions to my people. And there's a great book. I often like to make book recommendations. This one I read cover to cover. It's called The Power of Full Engagement. Wrote by Jim Lair and Tony Schwartz. It's probably about 12 or 13 years old. They ran a business out of Orlando called The Corporate Athlete. And the power of full engagement is when you're engaging with your employees, investors, customers, family, right? You want to be fully engaged, and managing your energy, not your time, is key to that. Because to be self-motivated and be motivating, you have to be vibrant. You have to have ideas. You have to be curious. And I know when I'm not being curious, when I'm not leveraging my energy, and when time is taking over, I get very tactical and transactional. And in sales and selling, that's something someone can hear over the phone. In a way, we need to be that pause that refreshes, pull them back, make sure that they feel that this sounds different because you have this high degree of empathy and this issue fluency. And some of your better customers, buy them the book. I think whether it's Kindle, I think maybe it's $10. I have no idea what it is, paperback. But it was one of the best books I ever read and pulled me back from the edge when the hair started to go a little gray before it should have. So 18. The hat rack. Most of the individuals that you're selling to or interacting with at your customers are wearing multiple hats. I think about our dear HR partners. I went to grad school with about 30 cohorts in HR. Most of them were there. We're in graduate school for training. We're there because, in addition to the pension plan and personnel and benefits, you now have training. Or you also have employee relations. So no matter the role, the high level of empathy with small business is that most people are wearing multiple hats. Why is that important to understand is that you want to be able to create focus. For me, the clever question I always ask is, which hat fits the best? Which hat would you just love to leave on the rack and not do or not engage in? But that's truly a trend you're going to see. So be mindful of the hat rack. And a great way to learn about people's jobs and their roles is I Google the job descriptions of these folks. You might, so what comes up is recruiters, or on Indeed or Glassdoor, some of these job descriptions come up, and what that tells you, it tells you what these people are responsible for, their pressures and drivers, and what the organization expects from that role. So be mindful of the hat rack. Employees. One of the things that I'm feeling since I walked in this door is a care for the employee. And people in the management team sitting up here is that they choose to be here. They love being here. And part of this whole experience today is about a focus on you. Now, that saloon door swings a couple ways in small business. Some small business owners that I know, there's a dollar sign over everyone's head. Wow, are you productive right now? Is this the best thing you could be working on? What are you doing? What are you doing? Versus, hey, you are my asset. Why shouldn't I train you, teach you, pay you well because you're the one who gets it done for me? So that's something to be mindful of. And really motivated employees attract other employees to want to be here. And really savvy customers can sniff out whether a culture is aligned or not. and this is up to you, I have found the cultures that I've worked in, the culture I've tried to create with my own firm, I tell customers about that. We do some work with a company called Avis Rent-A-Cars. Anyone ever rented a car from Avis? Yeah, great company. So we had a chance to work with their global account managers, and we started going down the training path and designing some training. I started to realize as I learned about their job is they're doing too many menial tasks. Number one, they got to get focused on the big picture, enterprise sales, senior executive penetration, all that, get to the C-suite. But they also need a value proposition, and they also need to know who they're actually selling to. I realized that they didn't really know their customer. So after begging and pleading, they let me talk to some of their customers. I talked to Google, I talked to Dell, I talked to Cognizant. And you know what they said to me? Without hesitation, they were all really glad that they were going through this experience. And this one gal at Dell, we talked for like 2 hours. And I was expecting pushback. I don't have time for this. Some training person for like one of our vendors. But they were like, oh, you're dedicating to this. Well, it's not really training, it's really a talent management initiative. Oh, yeah, that's really important. Let me say one thing on employees and I'll move on. The same organization, I knew the global head of sales, he's a personal friend of mine, and now he sells for us out in Phoenix. He was getting ready for a big presentation with the chief purchasing officer, one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world. So I had a good relationship with Bob, and Bob had a habit of calling me at around 6 or 6:15 in the morning. And I'm up. I can't pretend to know what I'm going to be dressed in at 6:15, but I'm up, so it's okay. Glad to hear you, Bob. How should this meeting go? And I said, well, I think it's about a statement and a question. Here's the statement. The statement was an acknowledgement of you, as the head of purchasing for a large multinational organization, are going to probably extract the right value from us that you need from a rental car and mobility provider. Pause for effect. But I have to believe something more than a low price and the availability of cars wherever you need them is going to matter more in this relationship. Before Bob could say the IP of relationship, chief purchasing officer, large pharmaceutical company, global, what do you think he shouted out? Cultural compatibility. So it's really powerful. So think about it. Maybe ask when you've earned the right to ask the folks that you're calling on, tell me about your culture. How are you thinking about employees? We're going to talk about the manufacturing sector. I've got a couple stories for you around employees. So sorry for a little deep thought there, but I think it's important. Oops. Oh. There we go. One lens. Typically a business owner, if they're lucky, they can wear many hats. They're very agile in change. And they came from somewhere where they had to do many different things. But typically a business owner looks at their business through one lens. That could be a productivity lens. It could be a time and materials lens. It could be a creative lens. So I think it's important in tandem to employees and culture to think about the type of lens that small business owner looks through and how that permeates throughout the organization. And I think you got a lens into how the organization is thinking about this division and what our charge is when we leave here tonight and when we go back to reality next week. So why is this level of empathy important? It gives you things to talk about. It helps you be mindful. It can help you create alignment earlier with these small business owners, because it can be a lonely existence, especially if they might be struggling financially or have an uncertain future. So you can be their thinking partner, which is a great term, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So a couple things I promise you, some success factors. What are some success factors that folks in your role that I've seen use really well, and you heard from one of them to open up this session, to help them be successful in our charge, certainly leaving here and taking advantage of all that you learned this week and being highly empathetic to the customers that you're calling on. First is, we need to be agile in change. Your solution, the way you talk about it, messaging, that's all going to get better. Processes are going to get better. Your comfort level with talking about workspace with customers in a particular vertical or geography or industry, it's going to get better. And I think about a famous motivational speaker that I still love, who I met recently face to face, had a chance to shake his hand. Has anyone here heard of Tony Robbins? One of the most giving individuals. Depending on how you've come in contact with Tony, you might have listened to his CDs or read a few books. I think early on in his career, he was kind of positioned as or thought of as this rah-rah motivational speaker, but he's very a deep, thoughtful individual. And one of the things that Tony says, certainly when we get a little frustrated and we're trying to push through some issues, is that problems are a sign of progress. And that's part of change. There's another author that I like, Seth Godin. He wrote the book, The Purple Cow. One of the things he talked about change in that book and in every book that he writes. He talks about change back in the day. I think about when I was working for a division of Procter & Gamble, we were working on the 10-year plan, which is an interesting contrast to the accounts that you're calling on. They're working on a 10-week plan, right? So this whole concept of change, it used to be periods of calm and projecting the business, and quarter after quarter we had our plan, we had our quarterly planning meetings, and everything just flowed with interruptions of change. Oh, we've got to resize, we're being acquired. And now it's constant change interrupted by periods of calm. It's just kind of weird. So I think for us, a success factor, as salespeople, closers, expanders, no matter what your role is, if you can be agile and change, it's going to benefit you. And be a change coach to your customers. Self-motivation. I am motivated by being here in front of you. I was motivated enough back in 2001 to start a business 8 months before September 11th and weather 2 financial downturns and a shift in business strategy a couple times. But I just loved so much of what I was doing and had a vision for what I could do. I was thinking about Michelle and her prospecting with her visuals that were motivating her and connected her to what she wanted as some motivation. I think motivation comes from where you find it. And I think it's important now, but just in organizations, there are not people lined up to come and step in and peek over your shoulder and motivate you. So much of the motivation I see you getting is from one another. Enjoying each other's success, supporting that success. And what I love about what we're doing is there's purpose in this work. And that to me is very motivating. It's also contagious with your customers. They can hear your passion. Remember how we kind of talked about before over the phone? I've done a lot of prospecting coaching and taken a lot of calls and sat on and listened to a lot of prospecting tape. When it feels and sounds transactional and tactical, it is. When there's a little passion involved and you're measured in your speech and you're coming as a curious cat into these conversations, it's different. And the toughest meeting to get is that second interaction, and you're more likely to do it. Ownership of development. I was thinking about how I should talk about number 3 here, and I think it's very obvious. I'm a developer, so I've owned my own development, and I'm in the development business. I laugh all the time. From our New York City office, I still have this old IKEA bookshelf. There's probably about 500 books on it, and my wife asked me, when are you going to get rid of that thing? And I kind of keep it around as like a badge of honor. It's got that, it's all like that press board, and the shelves are all bowed in the middle. But what I'm proud about is that every single book on that shelf, or those shelves, I think they're still shelves, I've read. And I read a lot of books out of fear, because I didn't know something, or because I wanted to be learned, or I never wanted to be in a position where I couldn't offer something of value to a customer. And one of the biggest fears that small business owners have is the fear of not knowing. What am I missing? What are we not thinking about? And that's where I think you can fill that void. So own your development, whether it's blogs, whether it's books. I hope you get a chance to pick up The Power of Full Engagement. I think you really enjoy that. There's also a couple books on BillWaltonSalesTraining.com that we can talk about later too. The fourth one, work upstream in the customer thinking. And this is where you go back to the empathy slide and you start putting your business acumen hat on and start thinking about and trading in your issue fluency. Understanding that business. I think about, not to get ahead of ourselves here, but the accounting and the legal profession, in terms of what I do, they're really bad at business development. And they're not great at marketing, and they know they need to do social media, but they're not that great at that either. Because for them, it's all about the billable hour. But the really good CPA firms that have survived acquisition and forfeiture or their business closing have been able to establish themselves in the market and have a point of view that's distinguishing. For manufacturers, whatever it is, we got to move up market in their strategy, or at least have a hypothesis about that strategy. So you're starting the conversation there. It's not, tell me about your IT infrastructure. You're going to talk about that too. but it's a different conversation, and it's a conversation they want to be in. And which leads to number 5, this whole purpose of what this whole concept of meaning more is about being a value creator. What being a value creator is, I know when I'm being a value creator, when what I'm doing, selling, speaking about transcends the thing. And not to diminish or put in a secondary position workspace or any Citrix solution, you're the value creator. That is your vehicle for value for that customer. And again, high level of empathy and being a curious cat. And I was going to say this later, but I'll say it now. I've never had a prospect or a client shush me away from being authentic, genuine, and curious. Never. And I've been doing this for a long time. So these are some of the things I am sure that you are doing some ounce, if not ounces, multiple of these things to be successful in this role. I'll come back to self-motivation, another thing what I've enjoyed about working with Michelle and certainly others of you that I've met, a great positive outlook. Because the small businesses we're selling to, they are facing multiple forces. Forces against growth, capital, customers, sales, their suppliers. It's hard. It's morbid to think about it, but in a way, they're constantly under attack for their time and attention and resources. And that's where I think we can be a breath of fresh air to these businesses, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So, a value creator, I think value is in the eye of the beholder. You might find some customers that like, you know what, you're a vendor, I see it, I get it, I understand. Yeah, I want 80 of those, per Kurt's suggestion. Great suggestion, right? I'll take 80, great. No, as my wife would call it, no bushy, no relationship, right? It's just, great, very transactional, very, very tactical. But depending on their perception and expectation of you is, hey, I'm looking for IT enlightenment. That's kind of why I wanted to talk to you. I don't just want a thing. I've got a very large client. We just finished a project. They wanted me to be the preferred vendor. And what happened was we did such a good job, we elevated ourselves to the value creator, and the client doesn't know how to handle it. They're like, well, now we got to use you more, and that was pretty good. So it's all about perception. What do they want from you, and what's that expectation? Let's talk about expectation for a second before I move off of this as a value creator. As we are all value creators now, you are anointed, so we get that out of the way. That it's table stakes with these very successful small business owners. And we in this room, we've all somehow, some way, whether it be Amazon, the tires you just put on your SUV, the dinner you had down the street, we've all been served reliably and well. So there's kind of an expectation of good, an expectation of wow me, know me, be precise in what you want me to do. So that's kind of what we're selling into. So that's kind of a reverse empathy, right? To be a value creator is be ready, be prepared. Drive this through your issue fluency and your passion and your self-motivation. And I just come back to what Kurt said. How is sales changing? What's different about sales? What's different about sales is this conversation we're having right now. Because I just didn't make this up 2 nights ago. This is what's happening, and this is what organizations are responding to, and this is how people are now finding success for themselves, career success and financial success. So, if I may, can we just, before I get off the topic of value creator, that's great. I'm very good at talking about the what. Let's talk about the how and what's different, right? What's our evolution? I think for us, the evolution around selling technology is interacting with customers to think about, okay, well, what are we actually doing, right? We're maybe making the organization more productive, be better communicators, more facile with technology, be able to use my device, whatever it is. But in a way, though, we're still helping them get products to market. Don't leave the business thinking on the side of the road when you're having these conversations about our solution. We see this all the time, too. I think you're probably experiencing this, certainly when you're in a phone-based or interactive environment. Discovery can't be one-sided. We've got to bring something to the table. Discovery cannot be an inquisition. So we truly need to reflect very early in a conversation that we not so much understand the customer's business, we respect it and we've found some modicum of appreciation for it, which is driving our curiosity and authenticity. I think sales calls are now going to more of an insights exchange. Tell, sell, present is now going to sharing. And this is one of the biggest trends. If I can help you as a sales organization move from being salespeople to value creators, it's not so much what we've got, our thing, our stuff. It's what we're seeing. And being a thinking partner. I'll take 20 seconds to give you a story about what we're seeing. I'm meeting with a large insurance company. If any of those have been in New York, you can see it from the highway when you're driving through New York. 32nd floor, senior executive, I know this person, we meet, enter the office, has an executive assistant who's wonderful, so kind, so nice. Beautiful family pictures up on the credenza, we exchange pleasantries, ex-athlete, very hearty handshake, we sit down, he on the couch, me on the other couch, and it starts. The foot starts tapping. And at that time it was a BlackBerry and an iPhone. They start buzzing and tweaking and burping and doing everything. So he puts them down on this beautiful mahogany table. They start vibrating and doing their thing. And all of a sudden, I feel this presence over my right shoulder. And I'm like, oh no. The executive assistant coming to the rescue of the senior executive. i.e., do you really want to stay in this meeting or should I rescue you? So all of a sudden, my client, John, if I can do this for effect, gives me so Bill, what do you got? Literally, senior executive, insurance company. And I have no idea where this came from. I don't care because it's a great story and I learned a lot from it. I had my 30 seconds of humana, and I said, John, it's not what I've got, it's what I'm seeing. And there's 3 things that I'm seeing. And all of a sudden, the little door behind me, over my shoulder, clicks shut, and we talked for about an hour and a half. So what enabled that conversation? Being agile and change, yeah. Fear out of getting kicked out of the office and not having the meeting, oh yes. That's an expensive train ride up there. But it was the ability to be a thinking partner and have a couple things to offer, some insights, and being genuinely curious. And also doing a little research that those things align with what this person thinks about. So those are some things. These are some gentle shifts, hopefully not major shifts, some shifts that you can make in your thinking and how you operate that I guarantee you can mean more to your customers as you're reaching out to the marketplace. How are we doing so far? Are you ready for some? Do you like that little clip art there? I probably look for that for like 20 minutes to find the right snippets icon. So it's the effort. It's what I do for audiences like this. What I thought I would do, if it's okay, is kind of talk about some of the industry sectors that you're calling on and give you a little bit of some Billisms and some wisdom around each one of those that can shape up your thinking so you can be a thinking partner in the spirit of value creation and meeting more, right? So why don't we start with accounting and legal? I kind of tapped on that earlier. And I have a lot of respect for these firms. The best accountants that I know are really business people, and they have the ability to work not only with you, but with your financial people, your financial advisor, everything you need to do, bookkeeping, and the best accountants really kind of work with you holistically. But they're, like as I mentioned before, not great at business development, not good at talent development. Their heads down, it's all about the billable hours. So a lot of these accountants really haven't been able to scale. And then during the recession, what happened is because of the economy and where it was, all the rich principals and partners couldn't, or the tenured partners, they couldn't cash out. So what they did was they started offering partnerships to junior partners in the accounting and legal firms, but realized, well, they don't have a Rolodex, they don't have executive presence, and they can't sell. So now they still haven't been able to retire. So what does that mean? The good accountants, good attorneys, right? They have to manage information, whether you're an IP, depending on if you're an IP lawyer, family law, whatever it is, depending on the nature of accounting, how you share that information, and if you're working on site or being able to collaborate, you have other associates, right? There's kind of information collaboration and sharing that I think is really powerful, as well as security. Architecture and engineering. The firms that I know, typically you've got some visionaries at the top who founded the firm, and then you've got legions of folks that can crunch numbers and create designs. Same thing in engineering. I know that these folks are very precise. Anyone here ever take the Myers-Briggs? Most often these are ISTJs, right? They're very critical thinkers, very logical, very rational, and very exacting. So I think in your approach, we need to mirror that a little bit and understand the type of business that they're in, right? 2 and 2 always needs to be 4, and hopefully they went to those 4 calculus classes because that building can't afford to fall down, right? I know I didn't go to those classes, but that's the business that they're in. So they have to manage, and it's all about revisions, right? 1 draft, 2nd draft, 3rd draft, 13th draft. You're on site. you're working across the best architecture firms have offices in many different cities. So I think that lends itself well to the work that we do. Distribution and services. I mean, from 3PL companies that are literally outsourcing the supply chain for customers to intermodal to warehouse and transportation and logistics. They too now are taking on a duty of care from their customers, so they have to protect information, they have to collaborate, they have multiple locations, right? I think about warehousing companies, there's a huge number of those firms in the New Jersey area where we live and have our offices. And everyone's trying to sell a value-added service in addition to providing transportation services. And they've all had some degree of success or not with that. So I think we can play in that stream as well. Financial and insurance, we kind of talked about fintech and digital customer and client acquisition. I think what they're facing right now is their clients, they're all trying to attract and connect with a high net worth individual. There's a $30 trillion chase going on right now, a transfer of wealth that our society, our country has never seen. We're kind of in it right now, but it's going to expand exponentially probably over the next 3 to 4 years. So everyone's trying to get a piece of the high net worth pie. Same thing with insurance brokers and agents. What's also interesting about insurance companies, the folks with kind of the shade on and the armbands crunching all the numbers in the back room, they're now being brought into major cases and sales presentations. So now the underwriter and the actuary is part of the sales process. So what does that mean? They need to collaborate. They need to share information. They need to have a point of view, and they need to have an impact on that business. If they're not, a savvy client's going to be like, well, what are you doing here? I'm glad you're the underwriter, but I don't need you here. What's your value? So that's what's happening in that space. Around healthcare, gosh, so many changes to count, but I know in our area, you can't swing an old rope without hitting a cardiovascular group or urological group that used to be 3 to 4 doctors back in the day. Now they're 200. And they're probably affiliated with another hospital at a prominent university. So that's one. Two is, I think about large healthcare organizations. There's an organization in San Diego called Sharp Healthcare. I think Sharp Healthcare encompasses like 16 blocks of Southwest San Diego. So that's a lot of real estate. That's a lot of information sharing. There's different therapeutic areas and clinics and services that they provide to the community. So again, this is some empathy and some knowledge and a little bit of know-how, what we're seeing kind of stuff, right, in the spirit of value creation, where we can support healthcare organizations. Manufacturing, I've been waiting to get to manufacturing. Most of the manufacturers that I know, light manufacturers, have a number of employees. They have a product that they make, and they are probably a preferred vendor or preferred supplier because what they make is unique. They're still in business because the uniqueness is still relevant. And they have talent and employees, and they've been able to retain them, which is something to think about. So I think about Western Massachusetts light manufacturing, anywhere from 15 to 30 to 50 employees. But that 15 is 15 for a reason. It's not 12 and it's not 17, it's 15. That 30 employees is not 37, it's not 23, it's 30 and 50 and so on. Because they've got it down to the talent that they need to execute their business model. So being mindful of how they look at talent and employees is really key. I had a meeting with a really interesting small business. I was working for a large bank out of Charlotte, and they asked me to go along on a sales call, which I was able to do. And we met interesting business. They were before, anyone used to fly in US Airways? Does anyone remember US Air before it was bought by American? Yeah, so there was this company that used to refurbish the seats on the plane, so the felt or the fabric seats, or then that bluish leather, and they had the ability to do that, conform to it, be able to replace the foam, and then also mimic from a branding standpoint the color and the dye and the PS match colors, I guess is what it's called, to get the seats that look the same but they're just fresher. So what they used to do is go to the hangar, take these racks of seats off the plane, put it on a flatbed, and take it back to the warehouse and start ripping and tearing and put the stuff back on and get it back. And I asked the CEO, it's a really amazing business. Like, how long have you been doing it? I said, about 10 years. It's like, oh. And I don't know where I came up with this courage. I said, you're not in the seat refurbishing business. And he kind of looked at me, had a wry smile, and I said, you're in the logistics business. Because if your logistics don't work, those planes aren't getting up in the air. And that's a non-starter for US Air, right? That plane's flying. So again, the uniqueness of manufacturing, the businesses that our client is in, you might find yourself challenging, what business are you really in? Coming back to change and agility and change, I think a lot of small businesses that we work with and know about haven't really seen the market that they sell into, how it's changed. It sounds like I can tell by the furniture that's still there from like 1983. It's like, gosh, really? Change the carpet, change the furniture. Get a Citrix solution, will you? But that's what's happening in manufacturing. Real estate, same. I think real estate, you have to look at corporate or residential. I know in corporate real estate right now, if you think about the concept of workplace to workspace, I know in our area, the Mercer County area, so where I live in Princeton, New Jersey. Anyone know where Princeton University, have heard of Princeton? Literally, if you snapped a line between Philadelphia and New York, we're right in the middle. And Trenton was there, and it was a big manufacturing center for World War I and World War II. So there's a lot of commerce, a lot of wealth that was created in that area. There's also a river, so you can imagine what happened. But then businesses started to relocate there, coming out of Philadelphia, coming out of New York. And now, because of the flexible nature of work, there was a glut of corporate real estate on the marketplace where we are and many other locations. So much of inventory management, repurposing of space, what these corporate real estate folks can do, and thinking about where they're located in their marketing strategy, I think a lot of them are really struggling to think about how do we leverage all the space that we have in our inventory. So those are just some nuances around real estate. And then real estate, high-end real estate brokers, the best ones that I know, they know their market and they know what's changing. Who's coming in, who's going out. We just had Bristol Myers build a global headquarters 2 miles down the street from my house. A beautiful glass building, sits right on the Princeton Pike. It's just a gorgeous building. And I was working with another client of mine. I said, you know what you need to do? You need to go sell them some change management coaching. It's like, why is that? Well, it's a different place. You've got new employees. A lot of these employees now have no commute where they used to have an hour, and now employees are going to have a commute where they never had one before. And it's a new building. I went to a total open workspace with the desks, no more offices. So a lot of things they didn't think through. But these are some of the things around real estate and change, both corporate and residential, that we can kind of think about. Not that it's going to help us close the business, but you're going to endear yourself to a small business owner or a small business because you have that knowledge of that. You can have a different conversation. You can ask better questions because you have that issue fluency. So here's where we are. I've got some parting thoughts for you, and then I would love to do a little Q&A if we could spend the time doing that. And I want to come back to your development and a good return on investment for this week. When I say that you're in control, I mean that. I think you are in control totally of your development, how you reach out, what you do from this week, what you take from the experience that you had yesterday in your community work, and you're in control of your own development. We're also in control of how we think and what our knowledge is and what training that we need to help you get ramped up, to get the knowledge and the insights that you need to be more comfortable. Hopefully what you've taken away from our talk is that context is king. A conversation outside of some industry fluency, a sense of you kind of know my business, and a good why and a good answer to the why did you call me question, I think that's really important to have. Famous last words, and even in the sales process, the famous last words I love to hear from salespeople are, gosh, based on what you shared with me, I don't have it all figured out, but I think I can help and I have a few ideas. Everything is contextual, based on your industry, based on what you said, based on what your employees need, based on this my device concept, based on this trend from workplace to workspace. You've got so many things to kind of think about. Here's what I've been thinking. So I think that's really powerful for you. Get a good return on investment from this week. I'm hoping that I can be part of that, some of the wisdom that, hopefully that the bite-sized Billisms that I can give you to be successful next week can be really powerful. And get a good ROI. Find a thinking partner in this room. Talk about your development. Hold each other accountable. Think about 2 to 3 objectives, learning objectives that you have over the next 30 to 60 days. I was going to say 90, but to me, things can change. I think 30 to 60 days. Some learning objectives that you're willing to hold yourself accountable to. And that kind of fits back to the self-motivation piece. And the last is I want to share with you this concept of a giving hand is always full. This is a quote directly from a sales author and a dear friend of mine. His name is John Orvos. We started our businesses together in 2001, and John had a business called Sell Coach. And basically what it was is very similar to the CRM system, or like Pipedrive, if anyone has seen Pipedrive. It was kind of a CRM pipeline, but with sales coaching at each step kind of solution. And I met John after a client of mine said, you got to meet this guy. Bill, you got to meet this guy. Bill, you got to meet this guy. After I finally said, okay, I'm going to meet this guy, I'll do it. And I meet John. Hey, Bill, really interested to learn about your business. Glad we met over coffee. I get an email 2 days later. Hey, Bill, we got this office space down on Tribeca. We've got an empty extra desk. Would you like to come down and join us? Sure. What's the rent? You know what? Can you do 150? And I'm like, sure. Great. Hey, Bill. Hey, we're doing this this trade show. Would you like to work the booth with me? You know, I'd love to have your thoughts and have a sales pro there to kind of. I said, sure. So we left this event, and we're going back to have a beer before we went home. And I said, John, I got to ask you a question. You're being way too nice to me. What's up? And in John's way, he just said, that's what I do, man. A giving hand is always full. And I think about that. I think about that in training. I think about that in speaking. I think about that for you when you're connecting with these business owners who haven't all, don't be seduced by the fact that they've got it all figured out. Many of them like to think that they have. Some might want to think that they don't, and that's not a comfortable place to go. But with your issue fluency and this value creator mindset and being genuine, this kind of giving hand is always full mindset, I guarantee you, you're going to make a difference, and it's going to sound and feel different to your prospects.